There's a pattern that repeats itself again and again in this world. When a woman is hurting, no one wants to see it. When she survives, everyone wants to watch. Her pain becomes a story, her strength becomes a show, and somehow everybody else gets something out of it except her. We watched it happen to Tina Turner, and decades later, we're still watching it happen, just through a screen. That's the truth behind so many stories we celebrate. Society turns women's pain into profit. Back then, it happened through record labels, interviews, and magazine covers. Now, it happens through posts, algorithms, and viral inspiration. Different platforms, same pattern. We sell survival like it's a brand. No one lived that truth more clearly than Tina Turner. She looked like pure power, bright lights, wild hair, a voice that could shake a stadium. But behind that voice was a woman just trying to make it through another day. Tina became famous in the 1960s and 70s, performing with Ike Turner. They were one of the biggest acts in music. But years later, Tina told the world what that success had really cost her. In her autobiography and in interviews, she shared the truth. Years of abuse and control that she'd been forced to hide while the world cheered her name. It wasn't gossip. It was her story, told in her own words. Her truth exposed something bigger than one relationship. It showed how power protects itself, how image matters more than safety, how whole industries can see a woman breaking down and still call it good business. And for a black woman in music at that time, speaking out wasn't seen as brave. It was seen as dangerous. So she kept performing. She smiled for cameras while fighting for her life in private. And the world applauded her for it. When Tina finally left Ike in the late 1970s, she walked away from nearly everything. The money, the house, the fame, it was all gone. All she asked for in the divorce was her name, Tina Turner. That was all she had left that was truly hers. Then came the hardest part, starting over from zero. Small clubs, cheap hotels, borrowed money, years of rejection and exhaustion. But she kept going. She refused to disappear. And when Private Dancer came out in 1984, everything changed. 4 Grammys, stadium tours, millions of fans screaming her name. Tina Turner had rebuilt her life on her own terms.
A lot of the R&B music was singing about depression, the wives and the love, and I found that when I listened to the music, I would become depressed. But when I listened to the rock and roll music, rock and roll stories, those guys were writing about fun stuff and naughty stuff and things that sort of made you laugh or play around with. And I thought, yeah, that's what I want to sing. I don't want to sing about hurt and depression. And that drew my attention to, that balanced out all of the laughing and the dancing in my act, because I didn't want to stand there and sing a blues and get sad.
It should have been her victory lap, but even then, the world wouldn't let her story move on. Every interview circled back to the same wound. Do you forgive him? Do you still think about him? Even at the height of her success, people wanted to talk about her pain. It's the same thing we do now, only faster. Back then, it was reporters and tabloids. Today, it's headlines and hashtags. We claim to honor the survivors, but we replay their trauma again and again, turning it into endless content for an audience that keeps scrolling. And that's the deeper problem. We celebrate survival, but we never question why survival was necessary. We say we admire strong women, but only after they've suffered enough to make us feel something. Tina Turner's life shows the pattern clearly. The world turns women's pain into profit, their trauma into headlines, and their survival into entertainment. She gave the world everything: her voice, her story, her truth. And in return, the world learned to clap for her strength instead of fixing the silence that made her need it. When Tina Turner died in 2023, the world mourned. Fans filled the internet with her music, her quotes, her smile. People said she was the definition of strength, that she survived everything. But even in death, the same cycle began again. The pain returned to the headlines. The same scenes were replayed. The same questions asked all over. Clips of her old interviews filled TikTok. Hashtags about her strength trended for days. Millions of people felt like they were paying respect. But the truth is, every view, every repost, every ad beside her face turned her story into content all over again. It's strange, isn't it? Even when a woman's story is finally her own, the world still finds a way to make it ours. Her life became content once more. Documentaries, tributes, think pieces, reaction videos. Everyone wanted to remember her, but few wanted to ask why her story had to be one of survival in the first place. That's the quiet truth we avoid. We don't just consume pain when it's happening, we also consume it in memory. And for women like Tina, the story never really ends, because the systems that broke her never stopped existing.
We are learning new details about the death of a prominent Hollywood therapist and former fiancé of comedian Drew Carey. 38-year-old Amy Harwick was killed Saturday at her Hollywood Hills home. The case raises questions about domestic violence and stalking. Her former boyfriend, Gareth Pursehouse, has been charged with her murder.
This is such a sad story, Anthony. It really is. The more I get to know Amy Harwick, the more I wish I had known her.
Yeah.
She's an impressive young woman.
Hey, Aaron, do we know why, after that recent encounter with Pursehouse, her ex-boyfriend, which was so confrontational, do we know why she didn't go to police again to get yet another restraining order?
Well, she talked about it with friends, but she's a therapist, she deals with victims, and she knows how the system works. And it's not always easy to get an order of protection. You have to show that there is a pattern, you have to show that your stalker really poses a threat. And we know that there was just one encounter, and she told her friends that he didn't actually threaten her. She calmed him down. So I think she decided, and she did, she added cameras, she had a roommate. I think she decided to focus on the security in her home, and it just didn't work.
A year later, her name was trending again, not for her music, but because of tragedy. Her son had died, and suddenly, her family's grief became public property. News outlets raced to post updates, social media filled with sympathy, hashtags, and old footage. And once again, people got paid to replay her pain. It's the same story, over and over. The same cycle of empathy and exploitation. We praise women for overcoming what we could have helped prevent. We build statues instead of safety nets. We post condolences instead of change. Social media makes it look like compassion, but it's still consumption. Every tragedy becomes a trend. Every loss becomes a hashtag. We mourn in public now, but we still move on just as fast.
After years of abuse, family and friends say Nicole Oliver couldn't take it anymore. She filed for divorce, took her 2 children, and attempted to start a new life. Then on July 8th, that hope for a new life was taken away when she was shot and killed by her estranged husband, who then turned the gun on himself. Schoenbred says her husband, who was once loving and kind, suddenly became emotionally and physically abusive.
I can honestly say that there isn't a week that goes by that we don't get domestic violence calls.
Maurice Willett is the sheriff of York County. He says domestic violence is a top priority with his department. So much they have a special unit devoted to handling the crime.
In September 2025, a statue of Tina Turner was unveiled in her hometown in Tennessee. 10 feet tall, bronze, smiling. People argued about how it looked, whether it captured her beauty, her strength, her light. But no statue can capture the truth of what she lived through. We honor her image, but not her warning. Because Tina Turner's story was never just about music. It was about what happens when society only values women after they've survived the damage it allowed. And that's not just her story. It's still happening now. You see it in the influencer who shares her trauma online because that's the only way to be heard. You see it in the headlines that treat abuse like entertainment. You see it in the way we praise people for staying strong instead of helping them stay safe. Tina Turner didn't owe the world her pain, but she shared it anyway because telling the truth was the only power she had left. Maybe she left us with everything we needed, the music, the lessons, the proof that survival doesn't have to be beautiful to matter. But the rest is up to us. To finally break the pattern, to stop turning women's suffering into stories we consume, to start seeing them as people before they're survivors. Because if we don't, this cycle never ends. It just finds another woman, another life, another headline. We scroll past it every day, different woman, same applause, and the world will clap again, without ever realizing that it's still applauding the pain.